We'll go ahead and open the meeting. 6:02 with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have a quorum. We have 3 members of the board here, and we have 1 public member remotely right now. So I need an approval of the agenda. If I could have a motion. Anyone have any additions, deletions, changes? Chris?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Teacher, staff, community comments.
Perfect timing.
I don't think we have her on. Brooke, I know you just logged on. We're at
Yes, I'm here.
we're at the community comments section. Would you like to address the board now? I don't have you on an individual item.
Yeah, I'm just addressing the board to ask permission for the Rutland Town 8th grade class to go to DC May 17th.
Okay, now I did listen in on the conversation on the program, and that was really well done, by the way.
Oh, it was great.
It was awesome. Any discussion? Anyone have any questions? I know Tina and I were listening. I don't know about.
I didn't get a chance to.
Okay. They basically broke it down day by day, when they'd be going, where they'd be going. Very little time actually spent segregated most of the time. The entire group is together.
Yep.
What am I missing? It was really a wonderful presentation.
Yeah, they planned out the full days for them. I think it's going to be a great thing for them just to be able to do as a class before they're done. With Rutland Town, they've been there since kindergarten, so most of them at least. So
right. I do feel bad for the last couple of years for the kids, but
I know.
And knock on wood, hopefully this will go as scheduled. Last year's class was 2 years ago the class was planning on it, and at the end we had to give the money back. But so there's been a number of classes that have not been able to go. And I know this group, I think, is pretty well. They're all excited about it. They're starting their fundraising. They've decided they wanted to raise an additional $3,000 to help offset some of the students that cannot afford to go. So anybody that has any spare money and would like to donate it to the 8th grade class, that would be more than welcome. You could contact either the principal or assistant principal. But there are all kinds of fundraisers, I think, that is in the works. Some of the students are raising money on their own. I know one in particular that is, and I have a lot of yard work, so. So that works out great. But any other questions? It's 700, and I want to say 700, about 750 with the insurance, right? With the insurance, so it's right around that ballpark per. And then for we have, I think, 8 adults outside of the school that are going to be chaperoning.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Great.
And that fills the bus.
Awesome.
Believe me, you could usually bring a second bus and fill it with chaperones if we could.
Oh, I'm sure.
Who doesn't want to go to Washington?
I know.
And it is an awesome trip. I was lucky enough to go twice, so I'm going to be quiet. But okay, do I have a motion? And of course, this is contingent on raising the money.
For everyone, yes.
Right.
I'll make the motion to allow the 8th grade to go on their class trip to Washington, D.C.
Any discussion?
Thank you.
Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think, should I?
You have to. We have to have a majority there, girl. Okay, passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you for stopping in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Grover. Thank you for having me. Bye.
New business. Any new business? We'll get into the budget timeline and all of that later. I don't think we have any other new business. Boy, that makes for short meetings. Okay, okay. Louis isn't quite here, so I'm going to go ahead and bypass the finance. We'll come back to it. Director's orders, you received them in your emails. If I could have a motion to approve the warrants.
I'll make the motion to approve them.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the minutes of September 13.
I'll make the motion to approve them.
Any additions, deletions, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we also have a set of minutes from September 28th. That is from our board workshop.
I felt like it was like the light version.
Well,
Yes.
can you imagine trying to detail it per?
No, I
Yeah.
know, but
It's basically, yeah,
it was an outline,
yes.
and I think it was pretty accurate.
Any additions, deletions, changes to those? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Principal's report. Oh, never mind. I'm sorry, I can't usurp superintendent's report.
That's okay if you want. I'm fine. So I have a couple items to just discuss here. So we have, first we have finished up with the Nwea Map Testing. I'll let Sarah and Eric talk a little more about that during the principal's report, just about the what they will do with the data and the rest of the year is moving to the mid-year, end-of-the-year assessments. I will talk about just some COVID updates. As of this evening, we have had 5 positive COVID cases at Rutland Town School. This has remained unchanged since last board meeting. 6 classrooms have been required to quarantine as per the Department of Health guidelines. 20 school community members, that's both students and staff, have had to quarantine as a result. The positive cases within the community. I know that talking with Sarah and with Eric, that they have done a lot. So they continue to work with their staff just to make sure that we are continuing to follow Department of Health, the American Association of Pediatrics, as well as the CDC recommendations around student safety within our building. There is one piece of the CDC that still is forthcoming, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, the testing overview. But it's in the works. It will be there. Just there's some tech issues on the state end with that. Masking updates, you may have heard, that's which doesn't really pertain to most of the Rutland town, but has been pushed back to November 1st. So we do anticipate probably November 1st. I wouldn't be surprised if it got pushed back a little bit further right around Thanksgiving, just kind of the way things are going. But we will keep you updated with that as well. Last week, you've probably seen this in the papers now, but in the last Tuesday's call, Governor Scott and Secretary French alluded to the testing options that are going to be available for schools. And we say options because it's up to SU or school district's discretion. I know that there have been a lot of concerns with regards to staffing, resources, things along those lines. We're meeting again tomorrow. I've met individually with a lot of our school nurses, administrators, because it is our goal that if we can do this, that we should be doing this, because like I said, our goal is to get kids back in the building. We know that particularly Rutland Town, other schools, quarantine has been an issue, and the fact that so as students are asked to quarantine, and then there's been a lot of concern over why we don't offer a hybrid, and people have been very mad and angry and upset about this, that we're not offering a hybrid option this year, and I understand that, but like I said, outside of a state of emergency, we don't have the statutory language. Dan French has asked us not to offer that hybrid, so we've shied away from that. So I think that the testing, if we can get it in place, will alleviate a lot of the stress on quarantine. And I guess when we look at this testing. It was broken down into two categories. First was the response testing, and then the second was surveillance. The response testing begins with probably the most prominent one, which is the test to stay. And what that boils down to is if with the test to stay option in place, let's say if a third grade classroom would have to, let's say there's a positive case that impacts a third grade classroom, and we have to send all of those kids, right now we'd have to send the whole class into quarantine because they're all unvaccinated. Then at day 7, individuals could then begin being tested, and with the negative test could slowly start to return. The antigen testing, what would allow us to do is, well, the individual who had tested positive would still have to quarantine as per the Department of Health, but the other students would, the following day, would be able to come to school and take a rapid antigen test, which is like the Binax Now, something along those lines, and it takes 15 to 20 minutes for the test results. And then with a negative test result, then that student would be allowed to attend school for that day. And the expectation would be for the next 7 days, wherever that might be, that student would continue to take those tests, and with a negative test, they would be allowed back in school. And at the end of the 7th day, they were fine. Then we just would be back in. There'd be no more testing. This is, I think just looking back from a parent perspective, who has an 11-year-old and worry about quarantine all the time and what that looks like, because when my daughter goes to school, the minute they're quarantined, that's basically it. They're on their own for the duration of that. There's no remote option. There's in terms of whole class remote, nothing. It's just, here's your work. We'll see you when you get back. I look at this in terms of this would be less disruptive for families, for students. I think it would be ideal, and I say this selfishly because I think we want our kids back in. I think and I think that from the conversations I've had with parents, it really has been the frustration has been a quarantine as their kids have been expected to stay home, and then while if we shift away from that whole class remote to the students who are still in a quarantine because of they can't get test done in time, or because they're on day 8 or day 9 when they finally can get in, this avoids all of that. So this is something which we're meeting tomorrow. Like I said, as an admin group, we're meeting with the nurses. I met personally with Rutland Town School nurse today just to discuss some of these things. And it is our goal that if we can do this, that we'll get this into place. Because like I said, it's just our goal is to get these kids back into school and to eliminate this. Because I think while we hear about the vaccines going to be readily available, hopefully by the end of this month for kids 5 through 11. There are no certainties around that, so it's something we are going to deal with. So our goal would be to lessen the impact of quarantine on families and on students, and really just to have a least disruptive year for our students. Because I do think our kids want to be in school. I think our families want their kids to be in school. And I think from a perspective, families want to, get back to work and do the things they need to do as well. So that is our goal with the antigen testing. So, we'll work through the logistics, and we will have more information on that, hopefully, within the next couple weeks. I know there are all sorts of webinars that we need to attend, we have to work through, but it is our goal. There are unique situations that Rutland Town has that other schools don't, just because of the numbers. A concern that we would have is if we have, let's say, 100 kids out or considered as close contacts, you look at the next morning, from a logistics standpoint, how do we handle 100 kids showing up at school who need a rapid antigen test, 15, 20 minutes? And that's not to say that we're going to say, well, sorry, we're not doing it. It's just there's a lot for us to work out and look to see, do we have to mobilize resources? Do we have to look at for volunteers to assist us in this process? So we are going to we're going to work through this, figure everything out we can do. So that's the big one you'll hear really being talked about is the test to stay, because that is the one that is being pushed, that want to be to minimize the disruptions and to really get the kids back in school. Then the other ones that you'll see here are reference to the PCR tests, that they talk about in school and at home PCR tests. And really what that is the fact that the option would be the availability of, if a if a family, for whatever reason, is quarantining and they, after day 7, day 8, day 9, they can't get a test. And I know that in some of our, for some of our families, it is difficult. You log in and it just depends on what's going on in the area around you. And I know Rutland City has had a lot of individuals out with, quarantine. So you might find that your day 7 coincides with a lot of other people's day 7s, and so it's locked up. So you might find that you're not available till day 10 or 11. A PCR test would allow us to, the family could come in and do a PCR test at school, and then we would ship it off. So we become another testing site. Now, obviously, there are some logistical concerns with this as well, just in terms of, because we would have to, it's time sensitive, we'd have to ship these, the vials out, so even if one person would show up, we would have to prep it, ship it, get it off that day. So just, while one day might not be a headache, but if we think 5 days in a row or 1, 2, 3, you can't just kind of wait and just do it in one day. So, like I said, that's more of a logistical, well, no, they're all logistical concerns.
Right, but I think
Staffing.
this is the
Yeah.
one that is the hardest.
Yeah, I mean, so it's just, right. So so we're looking at that in terms of what that may look like. We do see the need, obviously, we understand it, the PCR, having the availability, but at the same time, we're not a health center, and we understand that, our main job really is to educate students and get kids back in. I think the antigen helps us do that. The PCR is a service, would help us do some other things, but we just want to make sure that we're not overstretched, or our resources are already stretched as is, and we don't want to burn anybody out. The last part is just their surveillance testing, and this is a weekly test. It's a PCR test like you would go through, just, like I know that, like Friday afternoons, I'll go to Middlebury and just do the drive-through PCR test and just be safe. But it's similar to those where just would have a weekly surveillance test. That's voluntary, that a family can, opt in. I'm not gonna say opt out, they can opt in, do it. And it would just be, quick self-administered PCR test, and they would receive their results through the portal, similarly what we've, as adults, have access to in the past. So that is something which we are still going to be offering. This is like I said before, the final piece to that CDC option, where, in the CDC, the recommendations, talks about the physical distancing as much as possible, as best you can, and I think we're doing that. But with the caveat that you also have the surveillance or screening testing, and so we are having that in place. We wanted to have this in place earlier, but the company that's overseeing this, there have been a lot of tech issues across the state. So our goal is to have that up and ready to go by the week of October 18th. I know we're discussing this tomorrow, and so hopefully we'll have forms going out by the end of this week to families, opt-in forms, so with a little more information on that as well. All right, so you can see there are a lot of options with testing, but like I said, our concerns obviously are staffing and resources, as well as disruptions to the school day, because there would be disruptions, but at the same time is we want to do everything we can to get these kids back into school, and it's been, we're well aware of the issues around quarantine and the disruptions, and not just from across the level. So, all right. So next, I'll just quickly talk about, we do have Grcsu in-service day on the 8th, just for staff. Just a brief info, just, kind of overview. Next month, we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail, about what was covered. I know that the boards like to kind of hear what staff does during those times. And then Monday, Indigenous Peoples Day, where there is no school. Just a reminder to families, as much as I think our teachers would love to see your kids on that day. I think they also would like to just stop and take a breath of fresh air and kind of recoup a little bit after a great start, but a challenging start. And the last part is I just want to talk about the strategic plan. Excuse me. So I've discussed this. I know that heard this at the GRCSU level. We are bringing in a company called Battelle for Kids to do an SU-wide strategic plan. It really is kind of to help set a vision and a mission across the board. And I'm meeting with Mike Nicholson, who is the program director. He's going to be the individual who's going to be in charge this Thursday. And he and I are going to discuss timeline, the next steps. The next step will be moving to a district leadership team which board members will be invited to be a part of. And then from that point on, we'll then begin looking at community outreach. Our goal is within each of our communities to have a large gathering of some sorts. Obviously, if COVID related, we may have to do it via a Zoom or Google Meet. So traditionally it would be done like in a large space, whether it be a gym, things along those lines. We probably have to shift and pivot away from that, just being sensitive to what's going on in our communities around us. But we'll have that large scale gathering with all stakeholders. All parents will be invited to this, and really just be an opportunity to provide input, thoughts about where we're at, where I'd like to see, and not just schools, but the SU go. And because I think even though like with Rutland Town, a large majority of our kids when they graduate, they do attend a school outside of our SU, there still will be impacts. Even as we set like a graduate profile or programming, I think Rutland Town would still feel the impact of that, to the visioning. So if we are offering more pathways at our 3 high schools, that would provide more pathways, more offerings, obviously for our middle school students here at Rutland Town as well. So there would be a trickle down with that. It wouldn't just be seen as a separate isolated place. So we'll have more information on that as we go through. So, and that's really all I had for tonight. So.
Awesome. Any questions for Chris?
On when you start that testing, will that be the surveillance testing? Will that be everybody with mask or without mask?
So what do you
We'll
mean?
still have masks.
We'll
Kids will
still have
have
masks at that
Still have
time.
the mask at that point?
Oh yeah,
I know you said November, but I was just,
no. We'll see.
just
No,
a gateway to that.
November 1st really is it's a target deadline. Will be more applicable for like say Proctor, junior senior high school, and Poultney High School, because they are the 7th through 12. 100% of their students are eligible for vaccines. Mm-hmm. So if we get to that point where the governor and Secretary French feel, okay, so November 2nd, if one of those schools hit that 8% threshold, then we could then look at a mask optional policy within those schools, because 80% of our eligible population is vaccinated. Rutland Town would not be at that situation November 1st. So, okay.
Thank you.
Here's the question.
Yeah, that's your call.
Gwen, can I help you?
Yeah, so I've been communicating a little bit with Superintendent Zell about the situation that we had in the 5th grade class where, my son's class was fortunate. They got a week of remote school when everybody went out, but then on day 7 that ended, before the PCR test returned, and the other class went out at the same time and didn't get any remote school. So it was kind of a bad situation. I'm really glad that the state has changed its policy with rapid tests. I think that's going to be a good development. But I still think, in the interim, there still needs to be a better solution for coordinated return dates for when we have class-wide situations like that, where there is a remote option for all the kids on the same timeline, because I don't really think that any class should be left without any sort of option just because some people can return faster. And, my own son got sick today. I called the community health center because both of them did the same day results. They said they were not offering that. So, the soonest he can get a test is tomorrow. So, we probably have to wait the 2 days beyond that. So, 5 weeks into school, he's already going to be out of school like 12 days. So, I'm definitely looking for options that are better. I think the rapid test will be a good development, but that's I just want you guys to keep thinking about that and formulating strategies even in the interim until that progresses. Secondarily, I just want to ask too, we do watch the state list for the outbreaks in the state, in the schools, and we're still listed as 2 cases for Rutland Town School. And I know you guys have had 5 or 6 cases, so I don't know why that's not updated.
So I'll answer that real quickly.
Okay, go ahead.
So Gwen, I know you'd sent an email to me about that, and so that is a Department of Health issue. We submit our line lists, so when, Sarah, Eric, and Lisa Lonas finish their contact tracing, there's a very detailed form that is submitted to the Department of Health that clearly lists all of our positive cases. I think we've been very transparent about that. The Department of Health has had issues with their reporting or recording of that. So we've reached out to the Department of Health. I've reached out to, Secretary French, Mike Pichek, some other individuals to explain our frustrations, because we know, and like I said, I don't think maybe you were here for the first part, but we are clearly stating how many cases we have. We're not hiding that. But the state is, it's inaccurate data. It's on there. We're not the only school. I've reached out. There are other schools, other districts have had the same issue. Like I said, we are submitting these line lists, and we don't really know what's happened to them a lot of times. Sometimes they sit there, but there's, I've been very public about my frustration with the Department of Health's response this year. I think a lot of this has fallen to us. As much as I look at the antigen testing, things on those lines, part of me says, but why is this a school that has to do all this? That we are now becoming a local health center, we're carrying the lion's share. So with this, like I said, my advice, keep on just, there's a info email to just respond, say that this is not correct. We've been saying the same thing to them, but I know I've even asked Sarah to resubmit line lists to the Department of Health because we said that they're incorrect. There's nothing we can do at this point outside of just continue to just let them know that it's incorrect. So, but there's no, I know that there is, some people that accused or hinted at a cover-up or misleading. That's not happening at all. So from an ethical standpoint, that's something I think we don't operate that way. We've been very transparent. We don't, like I said, it doesn't benefit us all not to be very public about what's happening in our communities. Because frankly, in our communities, I want our communities to take things sometimes a little more seriously, because what happens in communities trickles into schools and makes things more difficult for us. So I think we have to, be very transparent, very public about what's going on, so.
This year, the last 2.5 years actually have been just terrible, but at least the health department was assisting us up until this year when they have dropped everything into the school's lap now. We have fewer people in the schools for various reasons, and now we're tying people up to do all of the tracing work. We're getting no assistance whatsoever from the state. And now they want to carry on with the testing, the piece. Don't get me wrong, I think it's great to be able to do the back to school PCR testing in the morning, do the instant test so that students all don't have to stay home. Because I think even the last time we had 2 classes out, and was it 1 or 2 students that were positive, and that was it. There weren't any others, but all the other class members had to stay out for the same reason. So this is, I think, going to be the biggest gain. As far as why some classes have remote, some don't, if an entire class is out, then that teacher teaches remote, because she has to work anyways, or he, and therefore can do remote. If you've got 1 or 2 children in school, the rest out, or 1 or 2 out and the rest in, teachers are not able this year to be able to do in-school and remote at the same time. They're not set up for that. We know that it did not work out to the best of the students last year, and we're trying to keep all the students from falling between the cracks. Gwen, you got your hand up again?
Yeah, just on that, I don't think we're talking about offering as a full-time option. I think we're talking about in these situations of quarantine. So I would prefer that the school had a policy that, especially when we're talking about a 7-day quarantine and then 2 to 3 days results, that you keep the entire class home for that period, not allow 1 or 2 students to come back, and keep the whole class with a teacher, even if it's a remote option during that period of time, rather than taking 90% of the students and saying you don't have a teacher and allowing 2 to 3 students to have a teacher. I think that's where everybody got really enraged. And at the same time, all of us parents are trying to work simultaneously. And I assume some of you have little kids at home. They don't get themselves through any sort of education during the day. So
Chris,
it's a piece that, I mean, I know it's a different situation for us this week where my child is actually sick, where he's home and we just have to work through it on an individual basis. But it's different when the majority of the students are out. And I think you guys need to make adjustments on your policies until the rapid tests happen.
Okay, Chris is going to address that.
So
Also.
Gwen, while there were things that we could do last year under a state of emergency, we cannot, and we don't feel it's best we can't deny anyone access to in-person education. So because, let's say we have a situation where 15 students in a class, 12 are still in a quarantine because they get tested, 3 are allowed to return. We can't tell those 3 kids, hey, you're just going to stay remote because it's convenient for all 15. We have to allow those students to come back to school. And we understand the headaches that causes, but those students have the right to be educated in person. So, like I said, last year in the state of emergency, we had a little more flexibility. We get a call or a case on Sunday nights in some of our schools, and we knew there was going to be a lot of contact tracing we had to do, so we could shift classes into remotes because under state of emergency, we can't do that this year. So I know that a few people have reached out and said, well, why can't we just keep everybody remote during this time? Well, there are people, for exactly what you said, one, who need access, need to work, need to be there, and for them, to have to stay at home with their kid, they don't have the luxury of, being able to stay at home. They have to go to work, so they need the in-person education. And for some of our kids, or all of our kids, like I said, we're prioritizing in-person learning. So I will bring this up with the admin group, as we look at the interim. But like I said, we do not have the hybrid. We are not asking our teachers to teach the hybrid this year. Like I said, something was done last year under a state of emergency, but this year, like I said, we're prioritizing in-person learning. I think in looking at our response, as opposed to a lot of others, and we can agree, disagree. I think we're trying to do as best we can. It's not ideal. Nothing's perfect. Because I know that as a parent, whose child is sat there with a packet, which looks a lot different to what the rest of the kids are doing. I understand, and I know people, get mad at me when I say I understand frustration, but I do as a parent understand that. But I think the call to just, hey, keep everybody remote, we can't do, and we don't feel that's the best practice. So, but like I said, we'll continue to look at it and explore options until we can get everything mobilized for antigen testing.
So, thank you, Gwen. Are there any other questions out in the public? Hearing none. Louis, I see that you're online now. We'll go back to finance.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Louis.
So I just have a few things tonight. The first one, we'll start with the Essar update. This document that was in the packet is just a breakdown of all of our Essar funds for both Essar 1 and Essar 2, and how much we have budgeted versus how much we've spent to date. This same document was handed out at the SU board meeting, and it's cycled through all of the district board meetings this month. So looking at Essar 1, I won't go too much into the details, but Essar 1, we received $446,000. This grant we started spending in January of 2021, when this was after the CRF funds sort of expired and fizzled away. To date, so we spent, most of our expenditures were from January to June of last year. We have still a few remaining investments or strategies that we're still spending down. We've spent to date $347,000. Of the remaining approximately 100,000 of it, of the remaining 100,000, about half of it is our indirects, which we didn't take last year, and we're going to take those this year. And then the remaining 50,000 are things that we've already planned on. We just have not paid for them yet. So we do have a plan on spending the rest of those funds. Essar 2, which is a lot larger, it was $1.6 million. We started spending that in July of this year with the enrichment programs in many of our schools. Those were summer programs to keep kids busy during the summer through enrichment activities, and then continuing this fall with some positions that we hired at the SU level, including a literacy coordinator and SEL coordinator. Several positions that are part of our recovery plan. We also have some money in there for technology, some money in there for leadership and professional development. We'll continue spending this money for all of this year and into next school year. And then the final one, which is Essar 3, we have not started spending that money. I can't imagine that we'll start spending that money this year. We'll probably start looking at spending that in the middle of next year. That is $3.6 million, and we'll be spending that for the, starting, like I said, starting next year for the 2 years following that. I would imagine that many of the initiatives that we start with Essar 2 will continue to fund with Essar 3, as well as maybe some additional ones. I'm sure looking to bolster up our enrichment activities for the next summer. When we planned this past summer's enrichment activities, we didn't really have a lot of notice. So working on increasing those activities for next summer and the following summers to come, and really concentrating on our recovery and hopefully putting some of the COVID expenses in the past and focusing more on recovery. Any questions on Essar?
All set? What else you got
Okay.
for us?
So the next item is budget. So FY23 budget timeline was in the packet. We did talk about this again at the SU board meeting, and then we'll start talking about this at all the local boards this month. So October starts our process at the local level, where we start talking about the budget process, the timeline, parameters, priorities for the board, and start pulling together the data to pull together the first draft. So on the timeline, there's two columns, one for the SU and one for the district. I'll go through both for those board members that were not able to attend the SU board meeting. So starting with the SU level, in September at the SU, we talked about the timeline, we talked about the budget process and the budget parameters. In October, at the SU board meeting, we'll present the first draft to the board. At that time, we'll have a board discussion, look for board feedback on what things they want changed, items to add, take out, stuff like that. And then in November, we'll look to present the second and final draft of the SU budget to the board. We'll hope to get an approval that month so that we have final numbers that we can use in our local district budgets. The local boards, everything is lags the SU budget by 1 month. So we start the process in October, which would be today. Today we'll talk about the timeline, and we'll talk about parameters in a minute. And then we'll bring back to you next month at the November board meeting, we'll bring back to you the first draft. In between this meeting and the next meeting, I'll be meeting with your building administrators, as well as the building administrators for each of the other local boards, and getting their input on the budget, and seeing what priorities they have, what items they need to put into the budget or change. And I will take that into account when I build the first draft. In November, I'll present that first draft, look for board feedback, and then we'll look at a second draft in December, and we'll be looking for an approved budget in January. It's important that we get feedback as early in the process as possible. This way it gives the administration time to review the budget and make any necessary changes. If we wait to late in the process, December, end of December, January, it doesn't give us as much time to pull data and really see what changes we can make that will have the least impact on students. So when we present the first draft in November, we'll really be looking for some board feedback on how they feel the budget, that's being presented, affairs in the eyes of the board. So if there's major cuts that need to be made, we want that feedback at the November board meeting. If possible, we understand that sometimes we don't have all the data in November. Sometimes we don't have all the tuition data, and we don't have a lot of the state data. So equalized pupils and some of the state data doesn't come until December. So we understand that some of those things we won't be able to get a lot of feedback until December, but we should have a good sense as to where the budget's going by the first draft. So at this time, I'd open it up to the board and really look to hear from the board as to, in this first draft, what, if there's anything that in particular they'd like to see, any additions, cuts, budget percentages. Share as much feedback as you can so that Sarah and I have that information when we meet and we can discuss that. And then I would encourage us to go into executive session later on in the meeting so that we can talk about personnel, both positions and contract negotiations and stuff like that, so that I can have that data to put into the first draft.
Okay. The only problem is there's 3 out of 5 of us here tonight, so I always feel leery about any decisions being made, even though it's a majority, it's not really, as far as those type of decisions go.
Well, we don't have to make any final decisions tonight, but we could at least start those discussions so that we are at least head down the right path.
Okay, I understand that what you need. Okay, we can at least discuss some of it in executive session. Does anybody have anything? Right, usually what the board has done in the past, Sarah's quite accustomed to us, and Chris, we start with 0 increase, and pretty much Sarah and those that above us would have to convince us what we need. They're very good at it. I mean, we know we're not going to have 0. But what we need has got to be substantiated. I know we're in negotiations again, and I think you've gotten direction from the negotiations board about what we're looking at, so that we have an idea, if anything, for the budget. But other than that, Sarah's got to look at, or the principals, leadership, have to look at, the administrators have to look at what we need to do to keep going forward. By no means will we ever slip backwards, but, and then they know that they present us with that budget, going along with the teachers' needs and everything else, and then we usually get a list of, oh, by the way, we really do need these, could we consider them list? And then we decide to go down through and prioritize, see if there are things on that list that we can take up. So the majority of the information you're looking for, I think you already have.
So the first draft that you get in November will have a page called Summary of Changes, which will have all the changes that are made that are included in the budget.
Right.
And then, which is usually anything that's maybe changed from last year to this year, any minor changes that the administration has asked for that we've included, any major changes that would have a major impact on the budget, we would include on that sheet also as items to consider.
Right.
If they can fit into the budget without having a major increase, we may put them into the budget depending on the size. But everything will be outlined on that summary of change, so it's all transparent for the board to be able to see and make decisions on.
That's awesome, Louis. Yeah, and then we'll take it from there, because we always add things on if we can before we go out to vote. And if those items have been taken care of, then that should leave some leeway within the amount we had to do other things. So you know how it works. You work the numbers. But yeah, we'll go from there. But very little changes with our board on what we want presented for first draft. And then, because there's so much of our budget, 95% of it is already set. There's nothing we can do with it. So it's that little bit of extra that we have to figure out if we need to increase and what amount we need to increase to get to our goals.
One of the major items that we always need to consider too is building projects that the board has been discussing or administrations that have been discussing that we may want to either include in the budget or include as an item on the ballot. So I know we had the one item we have that was approved earlier this year was the solar, which will come out of capital improvements. And then those were the solar repairs to the inverter. And then we'll look to put an item on the ballot to replenish the capital improvement fund. But if there's any other projects, I know like the board has discussed possible upgrades or updates to the second floor, or if there's any other major projects that the board is considering, and that you want the administration or me or Kelly to work on getting quotes between now and the next meeting or between now and December, then we can start that process now. If there's nothing at this time, then we can just continue to plug away on putting together the best budget we can.
Right. And I know the second floor is a huge thing, and just being on the board the longest, I just don't see where we're gonna come up with $750,000 to $1 million to do that project this year. So, I mean, we can talk about it, we can discuss it, but I hate to go out to get pricing on it because actually it's not going to be within our budget or means this year. Especially with what I hear the Senate's doing, so. But like I said, I'm only one member of the board, so we can discuss that.
I don't think it hurts to get the information.
It's quite a bit of work
Yeah.
for the specs and getting it out there and get a price.
The specs were written out before, right? Pretty much, so.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's not a lot of work, I don't think it would hurt to get that information. I know Billy was very interested in it. I know Marcia Turner had brought it up at our meeting last week. And I know that our pre-K wait list is high. I don't know how we've used that space necessarily, but I think information is helpful. So if
It is.
If it's not a lot.
Usually
of
that's
work-
something that Kelly would do. And I just don't know how he is with his staffing because we've been understaffed custodial-wise. So Sarah, I leave that up to you. You're the one that knows what, well, you know what he has to do.
Well, you're saying there's a chance, so.
I'm going to go out on a limb right now and tell you the
It's a
voters
slim
will
chance.
not approve it.
Okay. I think information.
Well, I would think if you're looking at the second floor, it's gonna be a multi-stage project where maybe one year we look at elevator, and then the following year we look at something, the next piece, which is maybe start finishing it, and then, or insulating, electrical, stuff like that, and then the third year finishing it. So I don't think it's something that we could do all in one year, both operational, like manpower, operationally, and financially.
Right.
So, I mean, I think it's important to start those discussions. If it's something that, if it's just a pipe dream, then that's one thing, but if it's something that the board and the community is considering down the road, definitely the elevator is the first step and it's probably going to be one of the most expensive steps. So that's something that we can start. I don't think we need to start looking at what it's going to cost for finishing the area, because I think that's down the road. I think the elevator is definitely the first step.
I think that's a great idea, because I'm not sure if it was 100,000 to start with, last estimate was 150. So, yeah, no, it's a good thing to have an estimate, and perhaps, if it comes under 200,000, it's something we could look at, definitely. But I don't think we need to go out to spec out the entire thing, because there's just no way we'd be able to do it this year altogether.
But I think if you get the specs and you look at it as a multi-year project, then you still have all the information.
Well, they can always use the amounts they had last time, and you figure how much percentage it would have gone up.
But that could
From
be
there.
presented.
Right, that
Right.
could be, yes, definitely.
I have no idea where that is.
Yeah.
I looked at elevators one for, I don't know how many years ago that was.
Wasn't too many, because,
Yeah,
yeah, it wasn't that many years ago.
yeah, 3 or 4 years ago, but I don't remember. Yeah. Okay, so you would like me to just see what specs we have already and then meet with Kelly and Lewis, we're meeting in a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, so we can discuss this with Kelly when we meet.
Perfect.
There's
I'm sure they're out there.
drawings there
Yeah.
for the upstairs. The drawings are there.
Thank you, Louis. I would love to hear that information and just look at it, what it would entail. Another thing I was wondering, are we still planning on including the busing for sports for next year?
I thought we did it this year.
That's a note that I have to review with Lewis when we meet. I had a note for busing. Yeah, so I have a note of changes to make sure that we have, because we added that this year.
We did add it, yes,
So
it's in the budget.
I put it
right.
in there to add it for next year too, but it'll be
Right.
highlighted because that's a change.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say, because we're doing it this year, so.
Right, and I've met with Sherry Sherry and I have met to review all of that, and then Lewis will meet with Sherry, Eric, Kelly, and I in a couple of weeks, and then we're meeting with Tech tomorrow.
Okay, and when you talk to Betcha about the extracurricular trips, find out what happens if they don't have a driver. I noticed, this last week,
Oh, it's
Rutland City had, there was a football game for 7th and 8th graders. And they were coming from, I think it was Mount Anthony. They could not find a bus driver. Their team was almost an hour and a half late before the game came. So I was just wondering how iffy is that?
It's been a problem. I mean, Eric can talk about.
It will be a problem this Thursday for students. So it's a continual issue that they're dealing with the best they can, just like staffing the cafeteria. We just have a hard time finding people, and they're having a hard time finding people. So
Okay.
it will
I'm
be
just
a
wondering,
problem.
Yeah, how much notice are we gonna be able to give parents to say that they should be on the bus Thursday to go to Springfield? That's not gonna happen, so that,
Yeah, Mike has, it's been an issue with cross-country because we haven't been able to get, our bus drivers have been able to do some of that after their bus run.
right?
But they haven't been able to, get drivers, any extra drivers. I'm sure Jeff can speak to that. I know, Mr. Gross handles transportation now. It's a problem. I mean, every week just about he's had to do an all-emergency call to say, not even for sports.
Right.
But usually for sports, we've been able to give them notice. Mike has been able to give them notice.
Okay.
I don't believe, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, if there was the day of, we didn't have a driver.
No, the day
Right.
of, yeah.
Yeah, that
And,
hasn't
ahead of
happened.
time.
and Jeff has been stepping up
Knock
to
on
do
wood.
the driving for us after school.
Thank
But
you.
we're stretched thin. We get, 50, 60 kids sometimes in the gymnasium for an extra 45 minutes. So,
'Cause we
sports is
don't-
just one more issue.
It is, and some people, they don't understand, they just expect the bus to be miraculously there, and then they find out
We don't
it's
have
not coming.
drivers.
Right,
Yeah, we're struggling.
right. So, okay.
And then also the lunches,
Yeah, that,
if we're gonna add,
yep.
and how that's going, will it be free next year also, or not?
I don't know. That's another thing that's highlighted that Sherry and I reviewed, Lewis, that we were gonna talk to you about second lunches. And I don't know.
I have not heard any information about lunches for next year. I think it's too early at this time. The state has not announced anything.
And as a priority, I think you already mentioned the summer enrichment program being more robust next year. I'd really like to.
I'd like to see Rutland Town get more involved in it. We
I
didn't have
can't
anything.
staff it. I can't, I know other schools, I felt horrible when they were to all these schools talking about, I had to beg teachers, they were exhausted. And Rutland City was paying teachers almost double what I could offer. So I couldn't staff it. That was there are some great things out there, but I was fortunate to staff our summer school. I know some schools don't have summer school. It's funded through Tapestry, and due to our free and reduced lunch numbers, that comes out of our local budget. So we had a great summer school program. A couple of people thought about proposals, and then they just said, Sarah, I can't, I need a break. I need to spend time with family. I agree. Some of them were wonderful. I would love to see some of those programs that other schools had. We don't have staff for Tapestry still.
Do you think,
We don't have staff we don't have custodians, we don't have any substitutes.
Burnout is real.
I mean, Eric and I have done close to 20 duties a week to keep school open for lunch duties, bus duties. I think Eric was at 17, we were both at 17 duties one week. So yes, I would love that. I just can't find people.
I'm just wondering if, because this year, it's not ever easy, but it's maybe easier on the teachers because we're not doing the hybrid model. That maybe we'll have more volunteers next year or people that'll step up. But maybe if we could get the list out there earlier, I don't know if we've got people from the community that would be willing to step up.
That's a good idea. And Louis, I didn't know if maybe, I know if you could share some of those offerings so teachers could get an idea. I know like some of the other schools, they had, therapeutic horseback riding and gardening and biking. I just think to give these are some of the offerings, and then, speak to your building principal if you have, it's like something that you're passionate about.
Right.
Yeah.
There definitely was a big range from what happened at one school to another, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not blaming anyone, I'm just, it would be, and like you said, you feel bad when you see all these being offered in other schools, so don't we, and especially when we're asked, well, how come Rutland Town doesn't have any of these? I don't think people understand the shortage we have on teachers, on aides, on everything. We just cannot hire enough people. They're not coming forward. So it's really hard to do these extra things that we want to do, and we don't have as much of a leeway on doing these. Options are out automatically because we don't have the staffing.
We just don't, and it's everywhere. I mean, I left school and needed to get gas, and Tennybrook was closed because they had no staffing. Stewart's was closed because they didn't have staffing.
Yep.
Went through McDonald's to get a coffee, and only the drive-throughs open, and they're offering more than we can offer some of our staff members with benefits.
Right.
It's just, it's not just Rutland Town, it's everywhere.
No, it is everywhere.
Yeah.
Rutland County, I know, as a whole is really hurting.
Yeah, I couldn't get gas at 8 o'clock.
I know. Sunday was horrible.
There were 3 gas stations closed on my way home. Like, are you kidding me? And it said, sorry, we are closed due to staffing.
Yep. Sunday was horrible. I heard a couple different stories of people that had gone to try to go to Petco, Staples, whatever.
Yeah.
They were all closed.
All closed.
They didn't have the staff.
Yep.
So,
So Lois, I have one question for you. You've talked about all these, all this money coming into the district. Is that in any way help reduce taxes or keep taxes low?
So with CRF and Essar 1, which we used mainly last year, a lot of that money helped offset some of the expenses of the local districts. So a lot of the expenses that we had to incur because of COVID, such as materials for social distancing, PPE, cleaning supplies, extra subs, we were able to fund all of that through federal grant money. So we didn't have to use local money for those expenses. We've also had savings, as I reported in like our year-end surplus, as well as some of the forecasts. We had savings in many different areas because of the grant money. That, like, I guess the biggest one would probably be on subs. Subs have not been available, so either whether it's Kelly subs or local subs, just because of the whole staffing issue that we're facing. But we've been able to use federal money to hire these building-based subs to be in our buildings, to be able to fill some of the vacancies. And that is resulting in some local savings. We can't directly use the money to fund our normal expenses like teachers and transportation, but we are trying to at least mitigate some of our increase in expense for things that would be COVID related, like the PPE and social distancing, cleaning supplies, and now looking at recovery, extra interventionists and literacy coordinators, things to help our students get back up to where they should be, which without federal monies would be a local expense. So we're having savings in that way. We're keeping the tax rates level or down by paying for these extra expenses, but we're not offsetting normal expenses with the money.
So what happens when we get back up to normal speed?
We shouldn't need those.
Huh?
We shouldn't need those. Right now, the students themselves lost so much, they lost so much in their education for a year and a half. Even though, I mean, everybody did their best, but parents weren't always at home to make sure the kids were on. Some kids just wouldn't get online. The students in general lost a lot of education that they would have had they been going in school. So now to catch those students up, we need additional help and planning on how to do this and how we're doing this. So hopefully, they'll be up to par before we lose the money. We should have.
We anticipate the recovery taking a couple years, so the federal money will be used for the next few years. Like I said, for those extra positions and for those local subs in the buildings, because we think the staffing shortage will last a few years, and even if it starts to catch back up, I mean, we still have unexpected, unanticipated absences on a daily basis. So being able to fund those daily subs by having people already, floaters ready in the building, ready to fill in for people, that's a huge expense that's being paid for with this money. And then those extra staffing members that are working across the SU with behavior, social, emotional, and instruction will help all of our staff members bring kids up to where they should be.
It's very strict that the number of
Thank
things, yeah, the number of things that we can use it on, Jeff, is very restricted. So he does his best, you know. There are a few places that are trying to stretch it a little farther than they should, but.
Well, Jeff, you do bring up a good point, that as we build things out, you know, we have to understand, and we've talked about this, you know, not just with Sarah and Eric, but with all the administrators, understand that eventually as this money goes away, you know, we have to build a capacity that we can wean ourselves off of that staffing or the program or resource, or we have to be creative and look at how do we continue to fund that. I know Tina talks about summer programming. I know a lot of our schools did a great job last year, but we used Essar funds for that with the understanding of, well, if we'd like to continue to do that over the course of summer, but when those monies go away, how do we then continue to fund that? And it might just be, you know, looking at our budgets and saying, well, you know, it's a values-based decisions in terms of we want to continue our summer programming for our students. So either, you know, without placing an additional burden on our taxpayers, what does that look like? And so we really have to look at the budget. But that's important for us as we go through this. We're not just adding expense, and then when it all goes away, say, guess what, taxpayers, now you're on the hook for all this. We really are on the back end building out either a way to slowly transition away from these resources, or, you know, Eric and Sarah will have to come back and the board say, well, if we found that there's, you know, high value in this position or these individuals, how do we then budget for this? And I think, you know, like Louis said, we have a couple years, and we know that in 2 years' time that this position has brought great value to our students and to our families, or this position. You know, how do we continue to fund that? That's something which I think, you know, between this group, we have to really create a look at how do we do that.
In the supervisory union, the board itself, when we went through who we were going to hire, what professionals we were going to bring in to help beef up, all those positions, the people that have filled them know it's a temporary position, that it's grant funded, and don't know what's going to happen at the end. So we're not guaranteeing you to stay on forever. So.
Thank you for the explanation.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Louis, anything else?
That's all I have. If there's no more budget feedback that you want to provide, or comments, questions, then we can move on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, going back, principals report.
All right, so I know Chris talked a little bit about our map testing that we just completed. It's an adaptive achievement growth test for reading, language, and math. So we've already looked at those map scores. Teachers have received those, and we started grouping kids for intervention as needed in all grades. 7th and 8th grade team building field trips were a success. Thank you so much, board members, for supporting this trip. It was amazing. Heard great feedback from parents, students, and teachers. Came back tired, for sure. Mr. Gross was able to do some rock climbing for a little bit with 8th grade?
8th grade, yes.
8th grade, yeah. Officer Angie went to do some rock climbing as well. So thank you to all the teachers and the board for supporting that. Bus evacuation was completed. Mr. Gross did that at the end of September. Another one will happen in February. Mrs. Daly, our new guidance counselor, and Robin Aiken, our behavior specialist, took a group of 5 7th and 8th graders to participate in the Up for Learning. So there's a little bit of information on there. They were the youngest group in our district to participate, our students, and I heard a lot of positive feedback on how great our Rutland Town kids were, which is always good to hear. And Kate Dealey is also working on starting a middle school student council, so I'm so excited that that will be back up and running again. And food service, you'd asked me to give you an update. I'm glad I didn't offer to pay for all of this because I didn't realize how much it was going to be. I was like, oh my gosh, it's $1,300 and it's only the first month. So one thing that I did speak with the kitchen with, I was usually a couple $100s a year. I was like, no, I'll just charge it to my account. And Tina's like, no, we don't want you paying for it. I'm like,
There you go.
okay, 1 month. It's, yeah, a lot of money. You know, the food service, just like everybody else, like Eric talked about, is struggling with staffing. And sometimes food delivery due to a number of things, staffing of truck drivers and whatnot. But they've been open to feedback and we're working with them. A lot of our kids are getting seconds. I found out a lot of them are getting second and third, so we need to inform them that they need to pay for if it's a second or if it's a third or fourth helping, right. Pardon me. So I want to see what, I know you wanted to come, I think we thought maybe in October, so we can talk about that again. Our kids are hungry. Yeah, that's for sure. And then building matters, there was a couple of community members that were asking about our air quality. So I'm not going to read everything word for word, but I just kind of cut and pasted some things that Kelly put together here. We do have great air quality, which is good. So that's there. And then just some upcoming dates. As Chris said, Monday, we have school pictures in the middle of October, and then Q1 ends and parent-teacher conferences will be approaching shortly. Do you have anything you wanted to add, Eric?
No, a lot of people are getting the food because we're going through a lot of food. It's just, the numbers are
and I don't
soaring.
think they're wasting it.
They're not.
They're not. I mean, I'm in there quite often, and it's just not being thrown away. I expected to see it. I expected to be talking to kids about it, and I'm not seeing it.
Yep.
So that little recycling barrel we have does not get full. I mean, we had five classes go through there, and they're not wasting the food.
I know my little taste tester just said the food's better this year.
Yeah.
Mine too.
They did, okay.
There's something going on. I mean, the numbers have skyrocketed. And matter of fact, the problem that we had is that to get kids through the line, because there's so many kids, so we had to reconfigure what they put out there, how much they prep. It's been a process all month long. I know there's been some grumblings, but they're working through it. They really are. The kitchen staff is working through it. And Kim Babcock has been great. She's been open to communication, talking to me all the time. And the staff has been receptive, more or less. So they're moving. They're doing it.
It's definitely, I mean, they do have the salad bar, which is great, but some of the popular food is it's the chicken fingers, French fries, pizza, nachos, so hot dogs. So it may not be, they haven't had soups or anything yet, but those more kid popular foods are very popular for second helpings.
Tina, did you have anything? I know this was your baby.
Well, no, I'm very happy about the lunches, and it seems like that's working. So that's why I definitely want to make sure that we account for that in the budget.
Right.
Because I think it's important that the kids get fed and are, ready to learn in the afternoon. And if they're not eating, they're not going to be able to. So, and I'm very happy that Aladdin's been doing a better job this year. So thank you to them.
And thank you for keeping an eye out. I was wondering how much would be wasted because I just want the pizza.
Right.
Kind of
and
thing.
Again, I'm not seeing it. I'm there literally, sometimes 3
That
times a
thrills me.
day.
I have
It's
no
just not
problem with feeding them as
fair.
long as they're eating everything.
Yeah, and they do have to get a fruit or a vegetable or milk. So we've had to do some training and reminding of the
Right.
kids because they may just want another piece of pizza. But I said, you gotta grab an apple or an orange or something too, and they'll eat it. Yeah.
Awesome. Jeff, anything?
I was curious.
I have a comment on that.
Sure.
So they only have to have a full meal if it's a reimbursable meal, which only the first meal is reimbursable.
Right.
So if you're getting seconds, they could just do à la carte. So if they want just the chicken nuggets or a partial meal, that is allowed under food service regulations. I mean, if that's not what the board wants, then that's obviously something to consider. But I mean, if you're looking at reducing, I mean, you want everyone to be fed and fed enough, but they don't have to get a full meal if it's a second meal.
I don't know if all the kitchen staff know that. And I don't know that.
I don't either.
I didn't know that.
So they can
Okay, well,
just
I
get
can have
à
a
la carte?
conversation with Kim.
Okay, yeah, because I
great.
told like a kid the other day, I said, you got, and he ate it, and they're the ones that reminded him, and I did as well,
Well, that's
so.
gonna save us a lot of money.
Yeah, if they just want the pizza.
Right.
Okay,
Because as far as the fruits and vegetables go, they can have unlimited fruits and
they
vegetables.
know that,
with their-
yeah.
With their first meal. So if they wanted to just go back up for fruits and vegetables, there's no cost to that.
Right, they know that, but they just, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I thought it had to be a second helping, had to be the whole thing again, so à la carte would save us some money.
Okay.
So, I mean, if we can do that, that's awesome. As long as they don't go fifths,
But
because
they
they just
still
want
charge the
nuggets.
same amount, though, that's the thing.
They charge the same amount,
Yeah,
even
for a
if it's à
second.
la carte? So we're not saving any money?
Right,
Not if it's à la carte. So the full meal would be the same price for a second meal if it's a full meal. But if we were looking at doing an à la carte, then it would be a reduced price.
so we should just confirm with Kim Babcock then, Louis?
Yep, please.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'll talk with Kim tomorrow.
okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I had a question. So how did the map testing this year compare to previous? Do you have that kind of data? Do you look at that?
Oh yeah, we definitely do. I think our kids, excuse me, did great. I shared some of those scores with Chris and Lisa today. Like every year, we do see regression. There wasn't a lot of big surprises, so teachers are looking at that data right now, and we're looking at that as well. I thought we did relatively well.
Is there any way we can just get a copy, even if we don't discuss it, if we could?
We can have Al Gregorich, he's our
Yeah.
GRCSU data, he could put together for next board meeting if you want, just
Okay.
a comparison of fall assessment from last year or to this year, so if you want.
And maybe the year before too, like
Yeah,
pre-COVID?
Pre-COVID.
Because
too.
last year was
We'll
COVID.
have to, I'll have to,
Yeah,
if
you can
it's
find.
available, yes.
I'm just
Okay,
curious,
yeah.
just looking at how.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
we keep
sure.
saying that our children, we really have no proof
Yeah.
except we,
Because SBAC isn't available for the
Yeah,
public
it's
yet.
still not
Right.
available yet.
We're keeping it a secret.
Last year, I think it was right around December when it was released.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're all on that same timeline. We expected it by now, but, that was part of what was being, posed to us was, we do these, assessments in the early spring and you get the data back. So you can start looking at,
Right.
the school year and, but when you get in December, you're
The
halfway
budget's
through the
already
year.
done.
And
Right.
you don't even have those kids anymore. They're in
Right.
next grade.
right.
And then I think they didn't even do the SBAC in 2020.
No.
No.
So, I mean, the map test would probably be more dynamic anyway.
Right.
So it would be
Right.
good to look
Yeah.
at the last 3
Yeah.
years.
And
And
our-
unfortunately, the map, this will be the first year we'll see a really full year of map, without, with limited interruptions, I should say. Because the first year, 3 years ago, we just didn't have the end of the year assessment because we shut down in the springtime and then we just didn't do map. Last year was just a bit of a headache, so I think, we could look at, we'll bring that data for the past 3 years if available, we'll take a look at it. and
Yeah, or
we could place
whatever
it.
test was used, because there was a STAR assessment.
Yeah, we don't
Or-
do a star anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, you might have that data, it's
I
not
think that was
exactly the
4
same.
years ago, that was my first year that I think that was the last year we did STAR. We were
I
phasing
guess
that
if we could look at whatever we had fall 19. And then,
Ask Al. He's great at that.
Yeah.
just so we
I
can
asked him
kind of
about
see.
that too. He said he would talk to you and Lisa, this was earlier, about that.
Yeah, I met with him this afternoon, so, sure.
What was I gonna say about the maps? Oh, we were nervous because we had so many kids in quarantine. I don't even know, we barely made the deadline. It's like,
Yep.
We made it.
we're never
I
gonna
was
make
wondering
it.
how you guys were gonna do that, actually.
Oh my gosh, it was so, yeah, and just a huge kudos to our teachers and kids, of course, but our teachers, everybody that stepped up, I mean, guidance, intervention, special educators, our teachers are just amazing. You know, they talk to the kids about why this is important, why do we look at this, and, you know, just to get buy-in. And there's something called rapid testing, that if you keep clicking, the sloth will come and be like, slow down, and it can actually stop you. So there are kids that will, I was one, or I would have been, at the time I had the fill in the dot one. So, you know, we take that into consideration. It is a snapshot. So if we do have concerns, there's other alternative assessments that we get on students, so we can say, okay, what do you need to work on and where do we need to help you? But our teachers were just amazing and we were able to get it done, and Ms. Daly is working on getting those makeups done right now.
And then I'm not sure if you mentioned the Gaga pit in here, but
No,
I
I'm gonna
know.
save it for next week.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Or next meeting.
okay, you
But,
can.
I like the improvements. I think outside have been great. I know my kids have really enjoyed the tetherball finally being up again.
Yeah.
I don't think that was up at all
No.
the last like 10 years.
No.
And they've been having a lot of fun. And the Gaga pit is wonderful as well. It can fit, I think, almost a whole class in
Yeah.
there. It's
Yeah.
huge,
nice.
and the kids are having so much fun doing it during TA time, during recess time,
Yeah.
after school. I think it's been a really nice addition, so I just wanted to thank the staff that was involved in that.
Yeah, so the kids talked to, I think, Mr. Rowe. Maybe Mr. Rowe talked to Kelly.
Yeah.
And then Kelly's just such a softie because the kids were like, will you build us one? And he did it the next day.
Oh,
He was like, I'm going to stay,
awesome.
come in early, like these kids. And so he talked to Eric and I, and we're like, the kids will love it because we used to have to flip tables. And I said, the issue is now is they're going to want like 10 more of these. But yeah, the tetherball, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to have that back. It does look nice. The black top. I know Jeff was advocating to get that black top, you know,
that looks great too,
resealed and
yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah, it looks
big.
good.
A
So
lot of
thank you.
improvements.
Thanks.
And then I was just curious, what, and I don't know if this is an appropriate time to ask or not, but having the kids stay after school on a Friday, you know, having parents that maybe come and volunteer, how many kids are allowed? Like, what's the ratio if we said, you know, Friday, 5 through 8, open gym, or, you know, play at the school? How does that work? Just to give like an opportunity for kids to have some social time outside of educational time.
I mean, to be in the gym.
Well, in the gym, or, you know, stay after school, you know, for an hour after, you know, 2 parents will be there. Is that enough? Do they, you know, it's not like necessarily a club, but like an intramural time,
right.
sort of.
A lot of it would depend on liability.
Yeah.
I just get nervous
If we
with
go-
COVID
I
and
know.
contact tracing.
Right, but,
Yes.
but if you're doing it outside,
Right.
you know,
And
there's,
outside is totally different,
It's-
because it
it's-
doesn't have to be a school function.
Right. It doesn't have to be a school function. If parents want to come do something outside, go for
Right,
it.
right. If it's in the gym,
then it has to be
Right.
vaccinated.
There needs to be a
Right.
facilities use
Yeah.
form filled out. So
And-
like Mr. Rowe's
yes.
doing something with, for Halloween, and he's doing it all outside. He usually does like the Halloween party in the gym. And I just said fill out a facilities use form just for liability reasons, just so I know that.
not only that, but we have to reschedule. If it's inside, then we have to watch the custodians, and they're short-staffed to begin with.
Right.
But anything outside after school hours, go for it.
But inside, because the weather is turning.
I know.
And just to give the kids, you know,
Yeah.
some social time, what is allowed? I guess, how many kids are allowed? How many parents need to be, or staff, or?
There's no, like, I don't have a limit. I mean, if somebody came to me and said, I want to have so many, I would advise them on, let's get more adults in here, but I'm just a little bit nervous to do something like that due to,
COVID, but
COVID
not only
right
that,
now.
the
Well,
best
seventh
one
and-
you can talk to is gonna be Mike Rowe. Because number one, you don't know basketball season's starting to come up and they're gonna have practices and all of this. I don't know what he has scheduled, what he's looking at, because
Right, it
sometimes
has-
we have other teams that use it.
Which is how the form comes into play, because then that gets checked, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Right,
Yep.
but I
So you
mean,
fill
as
that
far as how many people, how many kids, Mike would be able to give you a
would know
better
that.
idea of that, yeah.
Okay.
Because I couldn't tell you.
And the kids are asking for dances. I mean,
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
kids have, some of them have never had a dance.
I mean, 7th and 8th, a lot of them are vaccinated. So I don't know, something to look at.
How I know you had sent it out as far as vaccinations go.
We haven't done that for the Rutland Town, I don't think. They did it at the high school
Was that just for the high schools? I thought we
to
had
get
sent it
like
out
a
too.
number of how many are
It
vaccinated.
was distributed to everyone.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So,
in the beginning of the year.
no, it was,
No, not too long
no,
ago.
everyone received a copy of the attestation form. We
That's
sent it to
right.
all families.
Yep.
I don't believe we got one at our, I didn't see it.
Did it come from GRCSU?
Yeah, it went out to all
Yeah.
parents.
To all parents. I know I got a copy of it. Of course, I didn't get it as a parent, so I can't say it went out to the parents, but I know I saw it.
I don't remember seeing it at their, I got one for the for Rutland High School for my
Right.
oldest, but I don't remember getting one.
We'll have to just
Sent out-
make
It
sure.
was part of, it said went out to all parents. I didn't send out to just a, so it was
Was it,
GSU all
was
parents.
it
so.
in a digital newsletter or
It was
was
a-
it hard copy?
Well, it was a file attachment, attached it to, so.
All right.
Because one of the questions that it was asked was, how are we supposed to, we can print this off, like, their hard copies are available at school, so, yeah.
So you haven't gotten any back, maybe?
I didn't pay attention. I don't have anything to do with that. Those would go to our,
I know
it's
we're.
one medical thing I'm not doing.
We've been talking to our policy committee about the facility uses and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And, a couple things that somebody brought up at another school. And I said, well, why don't you do that off-site? So what if all those kids you want to have stay, maybe they could go up to the rec, up to the basketball courts and tennis courts up there and play ball and stuff up there. There's a much better facility up there. There's a playground up there, so it would be off campus.
Well, like I said, even if it's outside after school hours, it
Right,
would
I'm
count.
just saying that that's what, one of the things we're talked about is there was some specific things that were going on at the school.
Now, when you
Liability
were
really-
looking at your policies, do you have the old Rutland Town policy? Because we had a lot in it.
Yeah.
As far as you had to have a percentage, if it wasn't a certain percentage of Rutland Town, kids or family, then you had to pay electricity, heat, janitorial services. So I'm not asking you because I know, I just want to make sure you had something to, okay, that's all.
No, we were just talking about other functions and
Yep.
so I'm like, if that's something as a group they want to do, maybe
Right.
if they could do it outside. I mean, it's starting to get dark pretty early and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Something
Like I
we-
said, ask Mike, give him a call and ask him because he's going to be the best one to tell you, well, yeah, you're fine up until
Yeah.
November 18th or something.
Yeah.
So,
No, it is usually
yeah.
around then.
And Tina, the form was sent out on Friday, September 17th. I just forwarded it to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so.
Thanks.
So
I
should
probably
I-
missed that one.
Should I
Yeah, so-
include this maybe in our,
Very rare, I get one and you don't.
include this in our weekly newsletter again?
Sure.
Sure.
Can I
I
do
would.
that, Chris? Okay.
Yep. It helps with contact tracing,
Yes.
Definitely.
so.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that, I don't think I read that weekend. I had my
I'm-
optometry
I'm-
meeting. I had no nanny that
I know it,
day.
I'm sorry.
Sure that we don't have a problem with
I'm
one of the
sitting here
listeners,
going,
so, right.
What?
Yeah, I think
So-
that was the one.
Never,
that-
she catches
I was
more
like,
than
did
I do.
I not send that?
No, because the attestation form really is, it does assist with the contact tracing, helps speed up the process, particularly, at Rutland Town, where you will have some sixth graders, some seventh graders, some
Right.
eighth graders who will be vaccinated, so
Right.
just it allows us, to
Sarah's
move the
gonna go
contact
in,
tracing a little
Sarah and Eric gonna go in tomorrow and the nurse is going, well, yes, I'm inundated with them.
I know, yeah. Okay, so I'll ask Pam to include that in the newsletter the next couple of weeks.
Do you have anything else?
For
You got down
this,
through your list?
I think I'm done for now. Sorry.
No, it's very informative. Do you have anything else for principals? And Eric, you sure you don't want to talk about anything?
I'm good, thank you. It's been a long day.
It's been a long
It's been a long day.
Yes. We'll go on to personnel. We have contract recommendations. We just have the two, correct?
Correct.
And you got that in your agenda. One is just a horizontal movement. The other is a substitute for support staff. We have professional staff would be Bailey Sanders. It's a horizontal move from one level to the next. And the other is support staff. Brooke Caputo is a building super substitute. Do I have a motion to accept both?
Make a motion to accept. I did have a question regarding Hannah Anderson. Has she been able to move up to the the pre-K para yet, or is she still getting certified?
That's personnel.
I think we
can't
talked
really
about an
discuss
executive
that.
session.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
that's okay.
Okay.
Anything on the two? And hearing nothing, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I forget I have to vote. Okay, vacancies, you've got internal vacancies here, which is Boltney. Don't care. No, we care, but we don't care. We do care. Vacancies in general, still Rutland Town is looking for a long-term sub for first grade. We're looking for a long-term sub for first grade. Have been for quite a while. We're looking for a long-term sub for physical education teacher. Grcsu, well, psychologist consultant, they probably already have jobs. Special educators, the union is very short. We're very short on para-educators. Rutland Town needs, it's an anticipated 2022 para-educator slot. So if you're getting ready to retire or leave one position and you want another full-time position, Rutland Town does need a para-educator for next year. That looks like it, huh? Oh, no, this just goes on and on and on. Okay, just about all the schools in the union need custodial staff and on-call temporary custodian. And along with subs. Tapestry, we've been asking for a couple months now. Tapestry program is looking for people who enjoy spending time with kids. So please get hold of us. And that's a K through 6 program. And if anybody has any questions, don't be afraid to contact either of our principals or vice president. I almost gave you a huge promotion, Eric. Okay, I think that's it. Takes care of those. Chair's report, nothing at this time. Next meeting, I will have more information on what the Senate is looking at. I'm nailing that down. Going into budget time, it's very, very essential that we find out what's going on. Policies. We have 2 policies. Both of them are first-time policies. First one is the role of policy. And the second one is policy dissemination, administration and review. Did anyone have any questions or changes on either of these policies? Okay, we'll go ahead and approve those as first read, and they'll come back to us again. If anybody does come up with anything, feel free to get hold of Chris. He'd love to change them for you. Is this the same thing? Yeah, sorry, just to confirm that. All right, moving on, upcoming meetings, we have, our next regular meeting will be on November 8th. It will be both, so you can call in on Google, or you can, you're more than welcome to come to the supervisory union office. Okay, executive session, we are in need of an executive session for personnel reasons. Do I have a motion?
And budget, or,
Personnel
Is that all?
is.
Negotiation, yeah.
did you have a motion?
Yeah, I
That's
need
what you
one.
need? I make a motion that we go into executive session.
Thank you, Tina. Yeah, I don't like to say what I need and then say, well, I make the motion. It doesn't sound right to me. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of going into executive session?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous.